Good morning, and good afternoon, everyone. Based on your location, it's great to see you all here. I see more and more colleagues joining. This is great. You probably noticed that today we're a smaller group. It means that today we're deep diving, or rather zooming in on specifically on Agile Labor Inspection course. And this is a session for us to prepare for our residential phase, for us to take a look at where we are, what is expecting ahead of us. And it is great to have you all here. Let me wait just 1 minute to make sure that everyone is connected, everyone can hear and see me. And of course, if your internet connection allows, it's always great to see your faces on the screen. So please don't hesitate to turn your cameras on. It's always great to see you before we actually meet in person in Turin. So today, as you are joining, you probably remember from the first two sessions that we had, for the first common two sessions in the framework of Digital Governance Initiative. You remember we were working with interpretation, and we're continuing that. We have an amazing interpreter with us today, working on the second channel. It's channel in Ukrainian. So I invite colleagues, if you prefer English, either you stay for the first part of this session without interpretation channel because it will be entirely in English, or if you prefer to select already the English channel, this is the occasion for you to do so. And of course, for colleagues from Ukraine, I invite you to select channel number 2, which is channel in Ukrainian. Вітаємо колег з Держпраці. Дуже раді вас бачити. Запрошую вас вибрати канал номер 2 для перекладу на українську мову. All right, so let's take this moment. I see cameras on. This is great. It's great to see you. All right. So as I was saying, it's an occasion for us to start working in smaller groups by specific courses, and it's occasion for us to meet each other. So let me just take a step back and remind us what we were covering during the first two online sessions. We were looking broadly at digital governance, and we were talking about the why of a digital governance. And we had a kind of a wider AI governance debate. So today, for us, is the first step to move into our building block of the labor inspection course. And we will use the methodology. I hope you are familiar with the methodology of Digital Governance Initiative methodology already. It is part of your self-guided modules. There are 6 pillars we started covering already in the first two online sessions. And as part of these pillars, we are zooming in into purpose and data today. And this session is deliberately designed to take a look at where we are right now. So take it as a where we are session. It's a bit of a diagnostic. Don't take it as a diagnostic from institutional perspective, but for you to take a look at how you evaluate the way how your inspectorate functions, how you work. We're not going to talk about machine learning today. We're not going to talk about AI application. What we're going to do, we would like to, for each one of you to critically think and honestly assess inventory of data that is available for you. Perhaps already indicators that you have, look into some of the gaps and have a clear understanding what you have to be ready for the residential phase. So we will have these concrete steps today. We will analyze different sources of data packages, and we would invite you also to bring what is available to you. And a bit of a housekeeping rules, because I see more and more colleagues joining. Once you're joining, please select the interpretation channel. And that's an occasion for you before we begin. And of course, we would love to use the chat that we have in the Zoom. So please don't hesitate to ask your questions in chat. We will be using also different interactive activities today. We have 3 interactive activities. So be ready to engage. There will be some activities individual but also group activities. And also, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate It's a space for us to have also a discussion. So ask your questions either in the chat. Feel free also to raise your hand. And we would like to use these 2 hours we have together to really prepare in a meaningful way for your learning journeys in Turin. So let me begin. And let me locate this session in the overall methodology. As I was saying, we will be concentrating and zooming in on first to building blocks of the digital governance initiative. So if you remember, there is a purpose, data, tools, processes, methodology, and people. Warm invitation once again to go back to the self-guided modules and revise the methodology. So you have this sequence, and this sequence, we will be applying the specific sequence that you see on the screen in our course. First of all, the first block, something that I invite you already to reflect on. Why do we undergo digital transformations? Why do we digitize? And one of the key messages that we would like to send before we even going to go into the discussions of digital transformation in labor inspection, before we even going to start discussing AI application, we want to make sure that this message resonates and lands with you. We want to make sure that we undergo digital transformation, not because everyone is doing it, not because everyone is using an AI, but because we have a specific purpose to it. We know why we're doing. There is a specific objective behind the process. Now, the block we're going to concentrate during today's session is on data. Data, in a way, assessment for us, where we are, what kind of data we have, how we can leverage this data, how we can apply different types of methodologies and tools. And we're going also to zooming into processes next week. So these are the blocks that we'll be covering during our residential phase. And also, of course, the block people will be in a way transversal, but we will conclude with this block our week together in Turin. So before you come to Turin, do we have questions? No? Please don't hesitate. You can also ask questions in the chat. As I'm going through one slide to another for colleagues from Ukraine, there is also a presentation in Ukrainian shared in the chat with you. So warm invitation, before we begin this session, before we deep dive, we are inviting you to critically look at the data that you have, and we will come back to this in this session. We want to understand what this data block entails to you and how you can strategically use the data that is available to you. So as you can see, there are linkages between the two blocks, and therefore we will be covering these together. I wanted to take a step back and start today's discussion with the title of the course. You probably noticed that there is a second part to the Agile Labor Inspection in the title, and we're talking about digital transformations for workplace compliance. So I wanted to make sure before we engage in any deeper discussion, we have this clear distinction of what digital transformation is, what we mean by it, also what we mean in the context of digital governance initiative, and what it is not. I don't mean to say something that might upset IT departments or might upset colleagues who are heavily engaged in the IT discussions in your institutions, in the inspectorates. But I wanted to make sure that we start a discussion separating the two. Digital transformation, the way we're going to address it, is not that much about the IT as it's about purpose. It's about the objectives that we set. So it's comprehensive organizational change, the way you think, the way you work, who you serve, how you decide. It is also purpose driven. So it's not IT driven. IT comes later. Technology serves our objective, technology serves our mission, and we do not intend to use it the other way around, only because in the course you will hear different examples of IT strategies or IT tools or the use of the AI that we will be bringing as practical examples, like experience sharing from other countries. You really need to reflect, does it serve the purpose of my inspectorate? So this is an invitation for you to critically also think about already those examples and case studies that you see in on the campus platform, in the self-guided modules. We want to make sure that any kind of digital transformation that you have or that you are designing are purpose-driven. Then, of course, also citizen-centered, multi-stakeholder focused. So in our case, we would be talking and we'll be looking into different interactions with different stakeholders, the worker side, employer side, the community, the government in general, different institutions, especially from a perspective of a data, of who owns different types of data, how you can get access to it. That is already going to be covered in the first block. But I wanted to make sure that we are clear on what digital transformation is not and what we're not going to be how we're not going to be using the digital transformation term. So it's not just about internal efficiency. We're not undergoing digital transformation just to check the box. We're not going to be talking about technology for technology's sake. It's not because everyone is using AI, we're going to be using AI. We are also not going to be talking about one-time projects. It's for us, digital transformation, the meaning of digital transformation is really an ongoing process. It's evolution of the institution. And also you will see that different tools you work with, different data you have, this type of a landscape will also continuously evolve. And we want you to take any kind of methodology that we will be offered, also already the framework of digital governance initiative as evolving a methodology for you to continuously undergo the change. So if we summarize in practical terms what we mean by digital transformation and labor inspection, we essentially mean moving from we react to walks through the door to we are strategic about where we deploy our resources. So this is really organizational shift in a way of organizational cultural shift. And we would like to add to this analysis of different processes. We would like to add to this different methodologies you can leverage and also different tools that these processes require. Now, as I was saying, a little bit of a distinction between digital transformation strategy and IT strategies. This would be fundamental, I would say, in understanding the differences that we have in the scope and the purpose. So remember, the first block of our initiative, of our methodology. And this really matters. I want this to be one of the first messages in our courses. Really matters because this type of distinction really determines who leads, who takes the decisions, what kind of questions you are asking, and also where you are redirecting your resources. And digital transformation strategy, take it as a holistic strategy. It really makes us rethink what are we trying to achieve as Inspectorate? How do we need to rethink our operations, our processes, our partnerships, our relationships also with workers, with employers? What kind of data do we need for that? What decisions we can make differently? And if you take as in a way of decision-making pyramid, you will see that IT strategies would be part of it, but they would essentially sit at the bottom. The strategy would ask us, IT strategy would ask us what infrastructure we can build to enable this transformation. So take any kind of IT strategies that you have as enabler to your digital transformation strategy. Now, to give you a couple of examples, because you will hear many examples, and this is the way we also wanted to design and engage during 1 week of the residential phase next week. You will be hearing a lot of examples. So one of the examples I can already bring you here, we have many inspectorates who feel that they need to modernize, they need to invest into new digital tools. We have examples of huge investments being made, perhaps $500,000 or even millions of dollars into, let's say, new case management system. You're bringing in new software, you're designing it, it's part of your IT strategy, you're training staff, you're going live. 2 years later, perhaps you're using maybe 15 or 20% of those features that you designed. And still, you're making your decisions in the same way based on this technology or this structure that was designed. You're still visiting You're still working with the same workplaces. You're still making decisions on the data that was embedded into this infrastructure, IT infrastructure. Why is this happening? Why do we have only low percentage of use of the features that are available in this new digital tool? It often happens because we had a IT strategy in place, but it was not linked to our digital transformation strategy. So we want to start with a digital transformation strategy, and we want to suggest you a question. What are we trying to achieve? What is our purpose? What kind of data we have that can be linked to building the infrastructure? And then everything the rest, the IT infrastructure, the tools will follow and will support you in this process. Now, I wanted to start with a bit of a discussion that we cleared these distinctions, and we also wanted to make sure that we're clear with the way we are framing the Agile Labor Inspection course for you. I wanted to come back to you and to ask a question about different types of data that you are using. Perhaps you have data points that your inspectorate uses or plans to use. And this could be very different sources where this data is coming from. So I would suggest that we move directly to the poll. If you're not familiar with Slido, I invite you to take your cell phones, to open your cameras, scan the code that you see right now on the screen. Or you can also go, if you're using your cell phone to connect to the session, you can open your browser, you can go to slido.com, and you can simply put the number of this poll. It's 2116491. And when replying to the question that you see on the screen, I want to suggest that you think of a typical day at your work, or think also about maybe last week or any kind of representative or typical day when you're sitting in your office. You need perhaps to plan your next inspection visit, or maybe you need to design a new campaign, and you are looking at different types of sources and data that you have. And you're trying to better understand what data you actually have and what data your decision can rely on. So I can see already the first responses. You will have multiple options. They don't even fit on the screen. So I'll be scrolling back and forth to give you responses. So I invite you to continue replying. You will have different options. You may look into complaints that arrive to you, or tip-offs that arrive from workers. Their past inspection records that are available to you. Typically, occupational accidents and disease reports would be available. You might have a registry, or in some cases, if your system is already advanced and has interoperable components, you may either have automatically access to the registry of employers and businesses, or you may have access to Social Security and taxation data. Perhaps you are able to zoom in into data on sectoral level from size, risks related data or lists. There are also open source data that you might have, different online platforms, public sources, web data. I see that we have first responses on the screen. I see that there are still many incoming responses. So let's see if we have any changes in this poll. So mainly, I see that you rely on complaints and workers' tips-offs. Also, for colleagues joining us from Ukraine, you have a translation of the poll. It comes as a second part of the sentence. Oh, we changed the sequence, actually. Most of you rely on your experience and professional judgment. This would be very interesting for us to explore. or to explore in the next exercise that we have prepared for you. Is it an intuition that you are guided on the type of the data you want to consult? Do you have already set on the level of inspector for yourself different data points that you rely on or your first go-to data? Occupational accident disease reports are relevant and quite high in this ranking. And interestingly enough, not in every poll we still see this result being high in responses, social security and tax data. And still, of course, complaints and worker tip-offs for, I assume, reactive inspections. All right, so I will keep this poll open. It will be interesting for us to take a look of which data points your inspectorate normally relies on or has and uses. But I also wanted to show you a bit of a trend that we receive when we do this poll. The reason I said that workers' complaints and tip-offs are high in the ranking and when we typically run the poll is because we observe that there's quite a high it would be quite high in our data collection and use any kind of past case data or complaints related data. I was surprised by social security and taxation data because normally or online data also, it would be normally lower in the ranking. And in terms of different trends, it tells us essentially two things. Well, first of all, if you take a look at the quote we have on the slide, we say data is the fuel of digital inspection, but most of our tanks are leaking. What we mean by that is we already collect a lot of data and there's a lot available to us. And by the way, interesting response on your professional judgment, because you are aware of all of the wealth of information and data that we have. But normally what happens is that we collect more than we use. And here you do need your professional judgment to be oriented in different types of data sources that you have. Which we have on the screen is a little bit of a statistic. So we have the European platform Tagging Undeclared Work surveyed from enforcement authorities, and we have 57% that had a database able to flag undeclared work. But what happens is that only 13% of those were interoperable across ministries, and only 39 shared data across the borders. And it tells us one simple thing. There's data, it exists, but at the same time, it's compacted and it's siloed and it's sometimes underused. If you take a look at different sources and different publications that are offered by the ILO, there's one of the conclusion that ILO reaches in terms of global trends. There are databases that are underused because of either limited knowledge or human capacity or budgets or interoperability within the overall public digital infrastructure. So it's not really the lack of data. And the second point I wanted to make on this slide is that we often observe this reactive data trap. This is the reason I said that typically in these polls we have quite high in responses. The response on reaction to complaints or reaction to previous violations as a data point for us to go back to workplaces that we already know. What happens and where the risk lies here is that we have certain groups of workers, and I invite you to reflect on this, especially if you have been working on specific inspection campaigns or if it has been one of the bottlenecks for you. We have the specific groups of workers that are at risk. Let's say we're talking about migrant workers, or we're talking about informal workers, workers that are in a way isolated, and those who are almost never complain. So they're not part of those workers for whom we are able to follow complaints, we're in a way structurally blind to them. So they are invisible to reactive data. So you never see them, and the workplaces exploiting them, they never see an inspector coming. And it's not a data problem. It's really an in a way an injustice that can be fixed with the use of a better data. So this is also a reflection for you to what blind spots you might have when we're talking about data. And it's not really the Mission Impossible problem. No, we will try to a bit unveil this myth, but at the same time, I wanted to give you a bit more of a data and be a little bit blunt with the math that you see on the screens. Another example I wanted to show you is an estimate of the ILO of 2 billion workers globally who are in formal economy. So those who would be typically not captured by some of the reactive inspection data points that we have. And if you think of it, it would be more than half of the global employment. In most countries, you have, in terms of resources, and again, this is an estimate produced by ILO Stat. It's part of the ILO methodology for global comparable statistics. So on average, you would have about 4 inspectors per 10,000 employed people. At the same time, I do realize that we will have very different situations in the countries that we have right now online. But this is to point out to you that there is in a way a ceiling that we would not exceed in any country around the world. And this ceiling is 4 inspectors maximum per 10,000 employed anywhere globally, anywhere on Earth. At the same time, every year we have estimates of around 3 million work-related deaths. We're not talking about injuries, we're talking about 3 million deaths. This is a really striking number, with another tendency that is really worrying of 43% of countries that cut inspector numbers. And we are talking about the estimates that were done between 2009 2022 of 43 countries doing this, undergoing such cuts. So we're cutting the number of inspectors, but at the same time, we're observing how the employment is growing. And the reality that we face right now is that we cannot. It becomes a bit of a mission impossible for inspectors. We don't have enough people because we observe the cuts. I'm talking about the global trends right now, but this might resonate particularly with your inspectorate. And at the same time, the workload and the demand is growing. And this is exactly where we need to rethink the way how we work, and we need to be smart about where we deploy our resources, both in terms of financial resources and human resources. And we really wanted to bring in this angle of data-driven targeting. It's really about the way how you can rethink the way the inspectorate works in the framework of the digital transformation strategy that you are either undergoing or you're planning to have for the inspectorate, but also it's for us in the way how do we, as inspectors, can work smarter? How do we use the data to target, to move from, in a way, scattered inspections to identifying patterns, to move from our professional intuition to specific strategy, and how do we respond to this in a way mission impossible that we have in front of us now. In terms of the data, and the invitation for you to think also not only about the sources of data that you have, but also of, in a way, 2 rings of data that you also generate and that you can connect to. So if you separate into 2 groups, essentially speaking, you will have data that you would generate internally. And this is an inner circle data And this is data that's being generated by your colleagues every single day. You will have here your case management system. You have data related to different inspection visits, the records that you are creating, different track of complaints, workers' tips-offs, occupational accident disease notifications, reports, those types of sanctions that you are registering, and any kind of outcomes linked to follow-up and reinspection visits. Now, this is the data that you create and that you own, that you generate every single day. But also from the poll, you notice that there will be also an outer ring, and you might have also other different types of sources. You might have a longer list than what you see on the screen, but I just wanted to separate the two. The external or outer ring of data that you can connect to would be either business employer registry, information deriving from Social Security Tax Authority files, ideally real-time data that could derive from employment declarations, any kind of a sectoral data, sectoral level data, sector permits, licensing data. And we will have a specific session dedicated to open source data, so any kind of open platforms, public data, but also satellite data that is out there, it's public, it's available to you, and the way how you can leverage it. But apart from the open source data, this external ring of data, the data you can connect to, it exists. The question is, how do you connect to it? This will be someone who is administering it, would be not within the inspectorate, and it would be someone who owns it, essentially speaking. So the question is whether on the level of the country you have easy access to these type of sources. And making these considerations will help you to make one concrete step for an upgrade. And this only one step can be the most valuable for any inspectorate. You might create a very sophisticated and multi-step complex digital transformation strategy, but for most of the inspectorates, all you need to do is identify one specific single, the highest in value upgrade that you can do. Just one. So either it's taxes, social security, business registry, and only that one step, that one connection can already help you move and upgrade already, let's say, from reactive to more proactive inspection already overnight. And especially relevant would be for those of you who are working on specific campaigns. Identifying one high value upgrade can be already a game changer and can help you bring forward with your strategy in terms of campaigns you are designing. Now, I wanted also to make sure that we are making references and we are also in a way reframing um, the way how we are talking about the data ownership. I wanted to remind you several provisions from coming from ILO conventions. You are obviously familiar with all of them. Um, I'm sure you're working with conventions 81 on labor inspection and ILO convention 121 on labor inspection agriculture. But I wanted to make sure that you are also using the data that is being produced in as a minimum data set that is required by the conventions, that you're already leveraging and using that data set, and you can also embed it in the longer term digital transformation strategies that you have. So if you take a closer look there at the articles 20 and 21, there's a provision on annual labor inspection report that essentially is published every 12 months, so it's annual. It is sent to the ILO with a maximum of 3 months of this publication, and you already have there in the report in a way the backbone of any kind of data-driven inspectorate. You have data that is being being generated on the staff of the inspection services. You have workplace liable to inspection and workers employed. You have done different visits, violations and penalties that are imposed, accidents, occupational injuries, diseases, and we're talking about professional diseases here. So this is already a ready-made minimum data set if you wish. And we will be talking also not only about the sources available to you, but we will be gradually moving into which type of outputs and also indicators you can produce for your inspectorate that can help you become more agile, become more productive, but it can also be plugged in into your digital transformation strategy with the application of AI. So before we get to AI, we also wanted to make sure that you are not starting from zero, this discussion. The discussion is really grounded into the data and already the backbone and the initial data set is there available to you and is linked to ILO standards, ILO conventions. But we will, of course, go beyond that. We'll be talking to you about a number of indicators. And the reason from the very beginning of the session, I suggested that you start collecting and mapping out the data available to you. You don't have to bring the data, the sensitive data with you to Turin. You can also use cleaned up data sets for any kind of a simulation you would like to run or your reflections. You can anonymize your data. But what is important is that when we're going through in the first sessions together through different types of indicators, if there's one family of indicators that would be of a particular interest for you, either in terms of producing KPIs for your inspectorate or in terms of refining targeting or analyzing specific sectoral campaign that you're designing, or maybe you are preparing grounds for an algorithm from a perspective of AI application in your operations. So I would like to invite you to reflect on different families of indicators you can work with that would be the most relevant to you. Each indicator would tell you a different story. You can work with these indicators in layers. We will be going through the methodology next week, but if you take it as a layer in terms of inputs, for instance, that you have, the big question of today's session is where we are. What data do you have in terms of staff, budget, in terms of tools, vehicles, training, different resources that you have? If you add a second layer to this reflection, what can you do with this data? What kind of output you can produce? Um, but we don't want to stop only on the outputs, only on the indicators of numbers of activities that you're conducting or orders you're issuing or number of inspections that you're carrying out. But we want to get also to the next level, to the layer number 3, to the outcomes. What these activities and what these inputs in terms of different resources and data that we have, what kind of changes they bring. Now we're talking about the layer of outcomes, how our compliance rate improves. Were we able to make sure that the part of the wages, for instance, were recovered, or let's say workers were a group of workers were formalized? This would be still short-term results, short-term outcomes, short-term changes we're measuring. If you want to go broader, and if you want to think long-term, you might want to think how all of these different activities help us to arrive to long-term differences. You can leverage here. We'll be talking about indicators of efficiency for inspectors, but you can also leverage here SDGs 8.8.1. You can link it to different impacts that you are making in terms of not only inspection, but also campaigns on informality, for instance, which is really hard to measure. You really need to think it through. So um, it's really the question of us, and I'm pretty sure that most of the inspectors represented here, you're quite strong on inputs. So you know where you are, you know what data you have. You're also strong on outputs, you know what kind of indicators you're already producing and what you can work with. But at the same time, how can we transform this into longer term strategies and measuring the change that we are making? How do we get from we did 500 inspections as our one of our indicators or one of the KPIs to telling a story that 500 of those inspections were not only conducted, but also we were able to measure that 400 out of those are now in full compliance, or we and with link indicators to this. So really, the change measurement is this is the perspective that we would like to get into. Now, what I'm bringing you to the discussion that we'll be having shortly today. We'll be talking more in detail about data points, and I already started alluding to different types of exercises you can make and different jobs in a way that your data has to do for you. First of all, the data for targeting. Where should we go next? It is a forward looking. It's about being predictive. You're using risk signals, complaints, registries, tags, links, sectoral patterns that you have, or prior violations and history. Then you also have data for performance. How did it work? It isn't a bit of a backward looking. It's an evaluation of performance in terms of coverage, detection rates. You're looking into compliance levels, workers formalized, wages recovered. So keep this in mind as we will be moving forward to one of the part of our session where we will take a closer look and will guide you through the data points. Because why it matters and why I'm inviting you to reflect on this, once you're becoming strong on, let's say, targeting, but at the same time, you are remain blind on the performance, then you would be incorporating processes in digital transformation that would be essentially broken. So what we want to make sure is that we're both strong on performance and on targeting measures, and we do need both. And before we redesign our process, or before we go into applications of AI in our operations, we really need to make sure that both stay strong as two pillars we will be building on. Now, the uh, the big discussions that we are going to have is the way how our data can be structured. And often what we hear is that we need to work through our data sets because our data is way too messy for us to apply AI in our digital transformation. Now we and essentially speaking, this is a perfect reasoning to begin with, because big data would be worthless if it's a bad data. We would essentially be applying several dimensions. We would be assessing whether what we have and what we're starting working with, whether there's kind of a data that is accurate. Does it reflect the reality? Do we have a differentiation? Let's say if you're in your database, you have 25,000 of workers, but do we know how many of these workers are informal or subcontracted or platform workers? Then it would be also our bottleneck at a certain point has to be complete. In case in the exercise that we will be proposing to you, this will be a self-assessment exercise. If in case you are not able to reply to one of the questions and you have one of the fields blank, this not having a response is also a response. It means that it is also the blank field is also data for you. Now, in terms of equality and the way how we verify what we have in our data sets, we also want consistency. We want to make sure that if we are building interoperable system that allows us to consult different sources of data owned by other institutions, if we use a word undeclared work, or if we use the word informal employment or cash in hand, we have exactly the same consistency in terms of language and it's particularly going to be particularly relevant in our discussion on different LLM models, on linguistic models, and in AI application. Do we have this consistency? Do we have this coherence to be able to work with different data sets? In terms of a timeliness, do we have up-to-date data? Obviously, most of the systems are moving towards right now having real-time data. At the same time, would we have the same baseline in terms of the time the data was produced when we're working with data, validity, right format, plausible range, accessibility is also one of the indicators of equality. You might want to take a look at the format and analyze. Um, um, is it easy for any kind of inspector within your inspectorate to reach the data? Is it locked somewhere in someone's spreadsheet, so to speak, or do you have restricted sections in specific infrastructures that you're working with? So what we are sharing right now in the chat is a bit of a self-diagnostic tool. It's very simple and it's very quick, and we invite you to do it right now as we'll be moving to the next slide and next exercise. You will see that there will be um, a self-assessment around the data maturity that you have. We want to make sure that you locate yourself and it's a reflection of your own perception where you are. This discussion is and this session is overall positioning ourselves where we are, what we have, how do we move forward from it. So we locate ourselves where we are. This is your perception. This is not a diagnostic of your institution, not a diagnostic of your inspectorate. It's the way how you see what kind of data maturity your inspectorate has on this scale, on this ladder that we have. And we have the first step for you. This is analog step where you're working mainly with paper or spreadsheets. When you're building your annual report, it's mainly typed by hand. There are no databases, no linkages. So you would need to take the next step and digitize your core records. Once you take the second step and you are digitized, you're already you're thinking of building your case management system. So you would already have your case management system existing on this second step. Your data is already organized. You have a digital infrastructure to store it, retrieve it. And your next step would be to refine what you're working with, to clean and standardize the data, to make sure you arrive to this integrated step. You are linking to at least one external data source or register. You have standardized fields. You have regular dashboards. And now, once you're on the level, you want to take the next step to the analytical level, meaning you want to start analyzing the data actively. You want to establish a routine in your data analysis, going from manual risk scoring to data quality controls to using data in your daily decision-making processes. And now once you have this risk scoring, you want your next step for this process to become automatic. And this is where you arrive to the fifth step of data maturity ladder, where you are on the fifth predictive step, meaning you are working on the level of machine learning models. These types of methods that you are applying are driving the targeting processes. You have system that is learning from historical inspections. You are able to then continuously undergo the transformation. But the reality is we might be at different steps in different processes. The reality is also all of us in this virtual room and in the room next week in Turin, we will be also on different steps. So what we want to make sure every time we're bringing an example or a case study, we want you to be mindful at where you are from the perspective of data maturity letter. If you are, I don't believe any of us at the analog step, but let's say it's really a moment for you to critically self-assess where you are either on digitized or integrated level. Maybe you're already on analytical, or some of you might be at a predictive step of data maturity. And at the same time, you're looking for inspiration for new tools to continuously evolve. And obviously, we will be working a lot on the fifth step of the letter, bringing you examples of AI-driven applications and different data solutions. And the main focus will be on that. But this is for us to be mindful that we might not yet be there, so that you know which next step you need to take before you get to work with some of the specific methodologies or tools that will be showcased. Now, we don't have to be at the step 5 when we're beginning this learning journey. And also, we don't have to be at the last predictive step to be effective. We can be pretty effective if we're on the integrated step, for instance, or if we're on analytical step. What it matters for us is to be honest about where you are and to know exactly what will be your next step. So now in the chat, you have a self-assessment tool that will take you a few minutes to undergo. You can score yourself, and there are two versions, one in English, one in Ukrainian. So you can take a look and have this assessment and have an honest assessment of the step of the letter where you see currently yourself. So again, this is not an institutional assessment or evaluation. This is the way how you see at which step you are working right now in your country in your inspectorate. So invitation for you to take this as an individual exercise before we move into some of the discussions that will be interactive and experience sharing later on in this session. Now, I wanted also, as you are answering, I hope you're doing this right now because it will be helpful in the next part of our session. While you are answering to the self-assessment questionnaire, there will be only 6 questions, so it's going to take you a few moments. While you're answering to these questions, I wanted to tell you that, and I wanted to conclude this first part also of the reflection and the presentation. I want to tell you that you are not alone. There are different challenges and different approaches that are emerging that are of experimental character. You will see that there are a lot of pilots, a lot of experiments, a lot of also projects that are not yet perhaps embedded into overall digital transformation strategy of inspectorates that are evolving. So all of the different examples you will be hearing, take it as a source of inspiration rather, and also what resonates with you and what are you exactly doing or experimenting with within your inspectorate. It means that challenges are quite similar. As I was saying earlier today, we observe very similar trends around the world, very traditional trends, even before we talk about access to the latest technology or sophisticated tools that we have. The trends are very traditional and very down to earth. The reality is we have either shrinking resources or we have limited resources. We need to make sure that we are working smarter. We're becoming more agile as inspectors, and we need to be also very creative in our operations right now. So the question is, how do we transform this into strategy, and how do we then select and apply those tools to help us to elevate and to take the next step in our digital transformation journey. Now, a couple of examples just to show you how different different approaches are being applied, or how different strategies are being shaped around the world. If we take Hellenic Labor Inspectorate, there has been a lot of efforts and resources deployed to mine real inspection cases, which was then later on merged with a system, employment declaration system at Agani, which has real-time data. And this helped to address one of the strategic questions for the inspectorate in Greece. How do we push undeclared work prediction accuracy to higher levels? And we see an increase up to 67%. So that was a part of the target of the inspectorate, and the leveraging the data helped achieving it and bringing it to the next level. We have other examples. We are specific, and by the way, next week we will have several sessions that would be dedicated to AI technologies and applications in specifically in OSH, in occupational safety and health, and we will see what are the different advantages, but also challenges that different inspectorates are facing in the implementation process. So we'll be working on the processes level. But in the meantime, one of the examples drawn from the experience of the United States, we have OSHA's site-specific targeting program that is quite a clean example of using one external data set, and it is um, um, combining employer information submitted by employers on injury and illness. So there are logs related to injuries, occupational injuries, and professional diseases, and it combines the one single log that is covering more than 300,000 establishments, and all done through one online app. So OSHA uses the high rate and upward trending sites to decide then later on and to target what to inspect and to target the inspection. Other examples that you will find also in the pre-course reading and in the pre-course package is example from Lithuania. We have the State Labor Inspectorate that has a cross-check system of employer declarations against the social insurance fund. And on top of that, the inspectorate flies also drones over construction sites, and we will be having a separate discussion on the use of the new technologies and drones in different sectors, different operations. What it means in the context of Lithuania, since 2022, this required a real-time worker ID code. So legal employment can be verified right away on spot using the employer declarations, cross-checking with social insurance fund, and also flying drones over construction sites. We will have other examples in the course from other sectors as well. And I'm sure that colleagues from European countries are quite familiar with European Labour Authority, most likely already familiar also with the platform tackling undeclared work. I'm sure colleagues from Ukraine are also familiar with this case, and you're familiar with the toolkit that credits Belgium's Mining Watch. It's an analytical tool with doubling inspection success rates. It has also a component that coordinates cross-border concerted inspections. So this is another example where we have where we are able to turn the data available to us into more sharper and targeted inspections, even when it's cross-border, as in case of the EU level inspection that are conducted cross-border with participation of 2 and more member states. So let me stop here because I see that we have some of the results. I will just come back once again to our data maturity level, and we have some of the responses that are arriving in the chat. We have both level 3 and 4. We have response from Margaret. So it's both integrated and analytical. Once again, I said it's perfectly fine to have a combination of two because it would essentially depend on the processes we are talking about. We also have Callista telling us that's also 3 and 4 analytically integrated. So I think for this type of a context, the big question would be, how do we identify those processes who are still on step 3 so that we can take the next step up? But also, how do we ultimately move to step 5, to a predictive step where we are able um, um, really leverage the machine learning models that we are also able to use our routine trends analysis and put it into automatic risk scoring processes, really next step level thinking. We do have also responses that I see of the levels ranging from analog one, so level 1 to level 3. This means that before jumping into the analytical step of this ladder, we would really need to identify those first most burning needs that we have right now that will help us to move from manually working with our data. So let's say annually building a report or manually compiling some of the specific records, or perhaps we have gaps in the databases. Sometimes specific databases are even absent and we're working with spreadsheets. So how do we move, first of all, from analog to digitize before going into predictive analytics or machine learning, etc. So these are very relevant questions that I invite you to continue reflecting on. The link to the self-assessment tool will stay with you. We will have another one that we will suggest towards the end of the session today. But I wanted to ask you if we have any contributions from the audience today, because I feel I've been talking for way too long and you have been doing the self-assessment all by yourself. So I was wondering if you would like to take the floor and share your results, if you observed already some of the burning needs that you have, if there are specific processes that you are already working on, or that you think this course will help you to improve and take this next step in the data maturity ladder. Do we have any brave souls in the room? Not yet. I think you're probably waiting for us all to meet in person, but while nobody wants to take the floor in the plenary, I'm going to anticipate that everyone is going to have a chance to talk today because we have group work exercise that is we were prepared for you. So you will get a chance to meet some of your colleagues and discuss some of the questions that we are proposing to you. So now that we have started the discussion on different processes that you have, on the data that you have, I think it's really a moment for us to move to the next block of this presentation, and I would like to give the floor to my colleague Ramsha Shakzad, who is our ILO Technical Officer for Compliance and Technology, working at ILO headquarters in Geneva, and who is going to walk us through more in detail on the data points that matter most for labor inspection, on the data points also in which ILO is engaged and is able, on which we will be able to elaborate later on and go more in detail of types of the indicators you will be able to produce. And this is coming, of course, next week when we'll reconvene in residential format. But Ramsha, thank you very much for being with us. Let me pass you the floor. I stopped sharing my presentation so that you are able to project your presentation on the screen. We're happy to have you here, and we're looking forward to hearing more about the data points.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Just give me 1 second while I share my screen so I am sure that everyone can see. Okay, just 1 second. Slide. Okay. All right, just checking that everyone is able to see my screen properly, or if there is
We can see it.
all
Perfect.
good. All good. Okay. Just 1 second. Let me just fit this into the screen. Okay, excellent. Good morning, everyone. I see some, good afternoon, actually. I see some familiar faces and names within the chat and also within the group of participants. So it's quite nice to see some people who we've already interacted with on some of these topics. And thank you also, of course, to Elena for setting the stage and really doing a deep dive into why we are discussing the topics that we are discussing today. Like Elena mentioned, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ramsha Shehzad, and I work at the ILO headquarters as the Technical Officer for Compliance and Technology. Which means that a large portion of my work is working with labor inspectorates to understand how we can do digital upskilling in a way that is takes into account the level of digital transformation that we are already at, takes into account our national context, and takes into account sort of where we are planning to go with our digital transformation and where we really hope to be able to end up in this process of digitization. It's not quite an easy task as a government, as a public institution, to be able to digitize, especially because of the many roadblocks that start happening in the way. There may be challenges also pertaining to the infrastructure, resources that are available to us. Many of you may have heard in similar other ILO talks that the Labor Inspectorate is always sort of one of the least resourced organizations within the world of work, despite the very important role, of course, that they play within the world of work. So, what I will speak to you today is really about what type of data points, very concretely, we should be collecting, data points that will speak to us about effectiveness, efficiency, and impact. Of course, as Elena mentioned, you will be going into detail on this on Monday, really trying to understand the indicators. But just to set the stage and go a little bit more concretely into exactly what we should be collecting, where is the starting point, or if we have already started, as I see from the responses in the chat, where do we need to supplement the data that we already have? What are the sources of the data that we can look at? And also, how do we actually then use that data to start to reveal insights related to planning, whether that's related to being able to target better, whether, as Elena was also mentioning, it's related to being able to understand your KPIs, being able to understand our effectiveness and efficiency. Many of you may already be aware of and I hope that this screen is legible, and if not, of course, we will share the presentation afterwards as well. But many of you have been introduced, I would think so, to the ILO guide on the harmonization of labor inspection statistics. And this really is the key resource that serves as an inventory, as a resource to be able to tell us what data points are important for us as an inspectorate to be able to collect, to understand not just our effectiveness and our efficiency, but also to be able to take care of some of our reporting requirements under C81, to be able to share with external stakeholders should the need arise, and to be able to, of course, make sure that we are spending the limited resources that we have on adequately targeting where there is the greatest risk of non-compliance. As I mentioned, each of the indicators, each of the data points and what they say for our work is something that you will delve into deeply on Monday. But I just want to take one quick example from this list, specifically speaking, for example, to you see this title here for inspection visits. In a lot of cases, a lot of the inspectorates that we've worked with, many times when we speak to recording data on inspection visits, we may be recording simply matters such as the number of inspection visits we have conducted, possibly some lists of violations that we found. But what we've consistently found missing, and what the ILO guide again on harmonization really recommends, is looking at a couple of disaggregations within that title of inspection visits, right? We want to be able to look at what triggered that inspection visit in the first place. Was it a proactive visit or was it a reactive visit? That is where we're responding to a complaint, where we're responding to an accident or illness notification, or were we conducting a proactive inspection visit as part of our regular planning? This is important data, of course, that will tell us, as you may know, of course, the guidelines on the principles of labor inspection also say that a well-functioning inspectorate must have an adequate balance between their proactive and their reactive inspections, right? It is very essential for an inspectorate to be able to proactively target where we know that there are the greatest challenges in the world of work. We have, of course, had many discussions and talked about how the most vulnerable of workers, for example, may not be the ones that are filing the complaint. So we may not have much to react to. So thinking about what is the trigger of our inspection action, thinking about the first visit. So when we're counting the number of inspections, are we counting each visit? Or for example, are we counting by each enterprise? So let's say that I had to do 2 follow-up visits and one initial visit, one initial inspection visit at an enterprise. What does that count as? What are the metrics that we are using? Are we making sure that we are adequately documenting and linking each follow-up visit for our inspections as well? Were the visits announced or unannounced? What were the infringements that we found? And more importantly, what did we do as an inspectorate when we found those infringements? And were we able to correct them? So these are some of the deeper disaggregations, something that you will hear a little bit more about on Monday as well. But it's really important to take a look at the data fields that we are currently collecting, what they are telling us about our work, and how we could perhaps either collect more data, but my guess is most of the data is already available in one form or another to ourselves. It's more about understanding how some of these data points give us that analytical material to be able to make judgments about our work. I spoke just a little bit before also about the idea of inspection actions. You know, what we are finding, what we are doing when we find a violation at a workplace. Now, when I say inspection action, it may mean different things to different people, which is why it's very important for us first to align the terminology that we are working with. Again, if you look at the harmonization guide, you will see that there is a whole list of the definitions of each data point, the recommended bands you should be using, for example, for data points such as age, for classifications of small, medium, large enterprises. And it also speaks to specific terminology that we are trying to harmonize, of course, to allow for comparability, not just within a country, but across countries as well. Perhaps you want to compare within your region. Perhaps you want to compare within your different areas and districts within your own country. So in order to have that comparability, in order to have that alignment, it is very necessary to make sure that our terminology all across speaks to the same thing. Coming to inspection action, for many, it may seem that it's referring to an inspection visit. But actually, in the context that we speak of, an inspection action is the measure that is taken in response to a violation. So this could be, advice or guidance. This could be an improvement notice. This could be taking an enterprise to prosecution in the case of persistent non-compliance. And it is recommended to actually document those actions and then see that in response to each of those actions, how many enterprises came into compliance? So are we finding, for example, more that when we give advice and guidance, enterprises are more likely to come into compliance? Or perhaps enterprises are more likely to come into compliance when we are issuing a compliance order or when we are issuing an improvement notice. These are, of course, essential metrics for us to be able to understand exactly where our efficiency gains are, right? Where we are actually managing to make improvements and where there might be some gaps within the data that we are collecting. So once we have established, going through this step by step, right? Once we have established that there are certain data points that we need to be collecting, perhaps we already are, perhaps we have ideas of how we can supplement them, add additional points to this. The next step in question is, how are we sourcing this data? I mean, in an ideal world, of course, we have complete live visibility of the whole labor market. You have insight into every worker's employment status, their wages. You have real-time data available. Every data set that you need is connected, and there are no, legal, bureaucratic, technical barriers. However, of course, you know this better than I do, that is not always the reality. And the situation that we may be faced with is that we're, for example, working on records that cannot be fully aggregated, that we have inconsistent definitions or terminologies that may be used. We may be capturing activities. So again, we may be capturing our number of inspection visits, but not necessarily capturing outcomes, right? We may not be capturing what happens as a result of those inspection visits. Were we actually able to improve compliance? And so we may have certain gaps also related to resource limitations, the stuff that, of course, you know better than I do. The important thing in this context, and sort of where I wanted to set the stage before you really delve deep into the next week and start having all of these discussions and bring the data that you have, is that a very important and, of course, something that seems very common sense source of our data is the inspection visit itself, right? This is the data that we hold as the inspectorate, that we have leverage over, understanding what we can collect, how we can improve the way in which it is collected. And it is data that will offer us a wealth of insight into the work that we are doing. So while we are, of course, all in some ways recording the inspection visits that we are conducting, is there a question I see? Oh, no, okay, no worries. So while we may already be collecting some of this data, the key question is, does this data feed into any statistics in any meaningful way to be able to enabling us to make some decisions? And if, for example, we are using systems that are still not fully digitized, are we being consistent in the way that we record this data? I want to share a quick example, and just to set up a quick context for you. As I understand, many of us, of course, are at a more advanced level of the way in which we use our data and in the ways in which we are collecting our data points. But I always find this example useful to sort of bring us back to the basics of what it really means for the data that we're collecting, because oftentimes we really live in a sea and a world of information, right? Which means that there could be a million sources of data around you. And to be able to pinpoint and target exactly which source you're going to look at and which source is going to give you the insight that you need to be able to be a more effective labor inspectorate can be a difficult task. So I'll give you a quick example of something we did, a pilot program with 5 of our member states who were working on this ILO methodology known as strategic compliance planning. And within this methodology, the idea is that we select a sector that we know that there is non-compliance in. And we decide that we are going to make an inspection plan, a communication plan, certain interventions within that sector to understand how we can target where the greatest non-compliance is found within those sectors. So for the purposes of this pilot, we chose the private security services sector. And the first thing that our 5 countries did was that they conducted an inspection campaign They conducted inspections within the sector at random. This was the usual way that they were doing it. They decided some regions where the private security service sector was active, and they conducted these inspections. And they found, and mostly when they were conducting these inspections, they were recording it in sort of a paper-based form or in Excel, but there was no systematic analysis of the data that you were collecting. So what they started doing in this pilot was that they said, okay, let's start with an Excel. Let's start with something basic, and let's start putting that information within this Excel sheet and find what are the characteristics of those enterprises that we found non-compliant when we did our inspection visit. And they found that the majority of the enterprises that were non-compliant when they conducted the inspection visit, they had had at least 5 or more previous violations. They were using indefinite term contracts. They had high staff turnover. And actually, you don't see this on the screen, but they found that they were mostly that they were a mix of private and public. They were working with a mix of private and public companies, right, as service providers. They said, okay, so if most of our enterprises that are found likely non-compliant have this criteria, it seems that this is some of the things that is resulting in non-compliance potentially. Let's see if in a second inspection campaign, we can look within the same sector, but this time filter by those enterprises that we feel have some of these metrics. When they did this, they actually found that there was an immediate jump in their detection of non-compliance. If you remember at the start of this session, I was talking about the limited resources that we have. Within the limited resources that we have, it's very important to be able to accurately, to the extent possible, detect non-compliance. We don't want to be wasting our resources and inspection visits on companies or enterprises that are already compliant, right? So a large part of the data we collect is the ability to be able to know what enterprises are likely to be non-compliant. What are the characteristics? And again, this is not a sure shot science. This will always involve, of course, most importantly, the inspector's discretion and experience, because they are the ones who understand their regions, that understand the enterprises they work with. But having more data to work with will, of course, give them a better signpost, a better direction where there may be likely non-compliance. So what we found was that there was almost by country, in one of our countries, almost a 58% improvement in the detection of non-compliance just by a very simplistic exercise done in an Excel without any complicated data or software that was used, right? So I think it's always important to go back to sometimes also looking at the data points that we already have and seeing what information they may be able to offer us. A second case, of course, we have a case that I was speaking about starting from very basic processes. But we may have electronic systems, of course, right? We may have systems that we work with. But just very recently, I was actually doing a workshop in another place, and I was speaking to some of the inspectors, and they were saying that they had basically 3 different systems that they had to use to input data. And one of the systems was a more planning system. Another system was speaking specifically to complaints. Another system was installed for another reason. So they had these 3 systems where they were essentially having to duplicate work, but none of these systems were actually giving them the insights that they needed as inspectors to be able to target where they wanted to be able to know where within this region that I've been assigned, I have to do 10 planned inspections, let's say this month. I need data to be able to understand where I should spend those 10 inspections, right? So none of these systems were really giving the inspectors, either individually or on an aggregated level, the data that they needed to be able to plan better and to be able to understand similar types of things. What type of enterprises are mostly non-compliant within these sectors? What type of interventions may work for these enterprises based on characteristics? Is it a small enterprise? Is it a medium enterprise? Is it mostly female workers? Is it based in a specific sector, right? All of this information allows us as an inspectorate to plan better. And this idea is essentially what led us to, and I think we may have a chance to speak about this a bit later, but led us to develop an electronic case management system that tries to capture all of these statistics in a way in which it is actually useful to the end goal of an individual inspector, which is to inspect more effectively, right? Which is to be able to track the work that you are doing and to be able to see the outcomes of that work. So as an example, I hope that this works. It's not very clear, but I hope it's moving. As an example, we have this list of enterprises in this system, and each inspector has the ability to filter through this list of enterprises. So let's say that this month, I know that I have prioritized, my region has prioritized the construction sector, and we are going to go and inspect there. I can filter through the list of all of the enterprises I have to say, let me find those construction companies that have less than 100 workers, that have had at least one previous OSH violation, that don't have a collective bargaining agreement, for example, and those are the ones that I want to inspect, right? So having the ability to filter through the information is something that's quite important and is something that can help us do our planning better. So just to ease that flow a little bit, knowing what data we need to collect, figuring out how we collect that data, and remembering that our inspection data is actually a big wealth of information already, provided it's standardized, the terminology is aligned, and it actually matches what we are trying to achieve from it. And then the ability to aggregate that data, to put that in a format which allows the inspectors individually, the inspections managers, of course, to be able to understand exactly where and how they can draw insights from that data. So insights in being able to filter through a list of enterprises, but insights also in terms of aggregated statistics, right? Insights in terms of knowing, again, how many proactive inspections, how many reactive. What did we do when we found violations? Did we totally correct violations? Did we partially correct them? Did we not correct them? How long does it take us to respond to a complaint? How long does it take from the first inspection visit for an enterprise to come into compliance? Many of these indicators, again, that you will be hearing about on Monday and what they can tell you, but all of these things sort of important to keep in mind when we start thinking of the data that we need to be collecting. I'll quickly be wrapping up, and I'll just say one last quick thing, which is to sort of where we can start, whether that's in terms of really starting from scratch or whether that's in terms of really upgrading what we already have and updating some of that information, is that we can really start from standardizing, for example, a minimum data set that we have, right? I'm sure you have access to the ILO guide on harmonization of LI statistics. You can take a look at that. You can see what it would actually mean. I understood from Elena that you will be bringing data sets as well. So I'm sure that this will be part of the work that you do within the residential phase. See what are the fields that you need to define. For example, if you're speaking of age, if you're speaking of contract types, what are the specific options that we use? Or are we just leaving it free text, which makes it very difficult for us to be able to clean up and analyze that data later, right? So if under contract type, you have the option to type whatever, versus if you have 4 or 5 categories, for example, it makes it a little bit easier to compare even within your individual places. The recording of dates precisely, trying to understand which databases that we don't already have access to. Again, we spoke at length about, Social Security, tax authorities, open source data. Which databases do we not have access to? And it could be useful for us to be able to gain that access and what it would take. And an important part, of course, is that in the midst of all of this technology and all of the data, to also make sure that we are constantly have a feedback loop to be able to tell us that the targeting that we are doing through any automated systems, through any data that is collected, always has, of course, the inspector's discretion, which is an important part always of the entire process. And that there is always a share of random visits as well to make sure that the data is constantly being upgraded and that the data is unbiased. So we can't fully just dive into a system without making sure that we are constantly feeding it with new information to make sure that the predictions that a system might be making, whether in an advanced way or in a very basic way, are accurate and are actually corresponding to the reality of the labor market. So a lot of information from my end, but I hope that I was within time. I know that there is a breakout room coming up as well. But thank you so much for your attention. And of course, if there are any questions, please feel free to come in. Thanks, colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ramsha, for your presentation. It's indeed a lot of information coming from us today. And I would say that we will keep adding layers of complexity today. So it's the reason we're really zooming in and we're trying to analyze and see where we are right now is for us to critically think about what we can do with this data and how we can add this layer of complexity in the form of using new technologies and AI in different processes, operations, but also in the way how we are and we are working with the data that is available to us. So, of course, both the presentations and also different tools such as quick self-assessment tool that you had that will be available to you. But I wanted to bring this layer of complexity in a form of a reflection for everyone to have before coming to Turin. So both the data points that were presented by Ramsha, as well as different methodological orientations that were mentioned, that all of them will be available to you to go in depth thinking and reflecting before you arrive to Turin on what data you have and what you are ready to produce, not only in terms of indicators, but also in terms of the way how this additional layer of AI is going to be relying on the way how your internal and external data sets are arranged, whether you can actually reach the different sources of data. So the first point of reflection is for you to think about the sources. We really invite you in your reflections when you're looking, for instance, at the business registries. Think of a specific quarterly PDF report that you are typically consulting. So don't be generic in the sources because this will help you to construct the logic. Think also of different risk signals that you actually see every day in terms of a targeting. Are you working on a sectoral level, or what kind of a firm size information you have? Do you consult the history of the previous inspections? What remains invisible to you, and what can make your targeting more precise in the future? We also spoke about not only use of data for targeting, but also for internal performance that you have. Which KPIs you're producing? Do you have continuous monitoring of coverage rate, compliance rate? Do you have any performance indicator linked to your strategy, for instance? Think of also the quality. There will be an assessment for you to take a look at the data that you have. You have a quick survey for you to critically assess whether your data is accurate, complete, whether it's consistent, what is the timeliness of the data, validity, accessibility, all those 6 dimensions that you saw on the previous slides. So take a look, assess critically. You might want to start looking into those gaps that you have, or those data sets with the lowest score that you have. Maybe could be a starting point. The maturity letter that you saw. We will start climbing it. And in fact, the exercise that we have prepared for you is a reflection on the way how can you take this next step and what would be the role of AI in it. So you will see in a couple of seconds link to this self-assessment tool that we will be using. It's another self-assessment tool that we'll be using for our group discussion. So the question is how, in terms of maturity, um, um, data maturity, but also maturity of our digital systems, because now we're going more into system thinking level. Where are we in this ladder? How do we take the next step? How do we move from analog level step to all the way to predictive analytics? And in this, all of these reflections, what we invite you to do is to think about one concrete gap, or you can also phrase it in the form of a question that you would like to bring with you to Turin and to which you will be seeking a response to. Maybe one indicator that is most needed, you cannot build it right now. One gap that you see already in terms of um, your internal KPIs for performance, or one gap that is not allowing you to take next step in the targeting. So let me share with you there will be a self-assessment tool that will help you to take a look into your digital readiness to take this next step. You will find a couple of examples that we are presented today that can resonate with the specific responses that you will be giving, but also a couple of examples that we will be unpacking next week. So already something that would correspond to specific levels of data readiness that you will be identifying in this self-assessment tool. We have two versions of it. One is in English and one is in Ukrainian. It will, of course, available to you also after this session so that you can continue this reflection. And you can use this slide as a canvas for you to start preparing for our face-to-face sessions residential part in Turin. So let's take a few moments for you to take the self-diagnostic, self-assessment on the digital readiness and on your readiness to take this next step in digital transformation process, but also for you to take next step in terms of going from where we are into working with the data that is available to you that you also produce and moving to the next step in the DGI methodology and digital governance initiative with the six next pillar out of the six pillars that we will be covering in this course. It's a couple of minutes. Let me know if you have difficulties accessing the app. There are also a couple of questions. Don't take it as a comprehensive diagnostic tool. It's really to orient you in the discussion and also orient you towards some of the examples and case studies that we have prepared for you. So I would say a couple of minutes for you to take this quick um, quiz. So reply to questions in the self-diagnostic. And let me anticipate what will be happening next. We have several groups created in our breakout rooms where we will have a possibility to discuss the results of your self-diagnosis, of the results of the survey, of the questionnaire that you will be taking. But what will happen next after you are in the breakout rooms, we will extend perhaps not 10 minutes, but 15 minutes, given the size of the groups, 15 minutes that you will be spending in the breakout rooms. What will happen next? Once you are back in our virtual plenary, we will have uh, representatives of the groups, a spokesperson that you will designate, who will tell us the key points of the results of the discussions that you will have, what was striking for you? What were the results of the digital readiness assessment? Where are you on the letter, digital maturity letter? What will be your next step that you would like to take? Perhaps one biggest gap or one biggest challenge that you were able to identify. When if you are able to go to quick wins, it's fine. If not, this is what our next week will be all about. How do we turn challenges into wins? What is important is that you have a space to discuss the results of the digital readiness assessment. Any patterns you identify, any major gaps that you have or bottlenecks that you encounter. So let me go back to the canvas that we have here. I assume you are still replying to the self-diagnostic questionnaire, but it will be also a good moment for us to start opening our breakout rooms and making sure that you know who would be your teammates. You will be discussing the results of the survey. So I see that breakout rooms are open now. You should see at the bottom of your screens a link to accept and move to the breakout rooms. Again, we'll be discussing the results of the self-assessment, where you are on the letter, what will be your next step, what is the challenge that you experience working or accessing different types of data. So let's make sure everyone has a possibility to join the room. We will be working without interpretation in the breakout rooms. Yes, do we have a question here? We have, I don't think that was, it did not seem to be a question. Please don't hesitate. If you have any doubts about the rooms, we will have 2 rooms in English and 2 rooms in Ukrainian. So we'll be working without interpretation. All right, let's make sure we are all in the rooms. It's not much time that we have, only 15 minutes. Most of us have joined. All right, I see that Group 4 working in Ukrainian still does not have 3 participants. Let me switch to Ukrainian. Колеги, доброго дня ще раз. Я бачу, що в нас є група номер 4, і бачу, що пан Вадим вже приєднався до цієї групи. Однак, колеги, пан Андрій, пані Світлана, так, пан Олександр, чи є у вас лінк, за яким ви можете приєднатися до цієї групи? I also see people moving from one room to another. Окей. Бачу, що колеги з однієї групи до іншої переміщаються. All right, and then we also have English-speaking group. We have Linda, who has not yet joined the group, and Kiru. Then we have Kalista. User does not have a name, so if you are connected as user, you might want to make sure you're joining the link that you see. All right. All right, so colleagues, do you have different and be back with us? We have just a couple of seconds left. All right. So 10 more seconds. Now, the big question that we have is what your group has discovered. Where are you in this data maturity letters? Are you ready to take the next step? What have you discovered? Do you have a lot of data at your disposal? You have rich registries. You are not leveraging enough the data that you have. Perhaps you are working on making automated process, or you're working on specific algorithm to analyze the data. Maybe data exists, no one mines it, and we will go into data mining next week more in detail. Do you have, are you concentrated more on the work and how perhaps you are leveraging AI already in your reactive or proactive inspections? Do you have difficulties, bottlenecks, or on the contrary, you are leveraging digital infrastructure, interoperable systems, or access to your social security tax-related data? Do you have any outputs in terms of a discussion that you had on your performance? Maybe you were concentrating mainly on KPIs, performance indicators, or the data that you're internally producing. We have some inputs that are already there in the chat box. So perhaps it's an occasion for me to invite colleagues from Group 1. We had an English-speaking group, Kalista. I see a comment session 1. Were you referring to the first session of the course where we're laying out all of the 6 pillars of the DGI, or you would like to take the floor and tell us a little bit more about your assessment, where you are in the data maturity letter or discussions from the group 1? We have very shy colleagues today. I can promise you that this is definitely going to change, because the way we designed the training and learning journeys for you next week, there will be a lot of discussions, and we really want you to speak up in those discussions. We will be talking about something new, something that is very experimental, applications of AI in different operations and inspection. And we do know that this is quite a sensitive area. So we do expect you to intervene and tell us what is your experience and also how different cases and examples resonate. So I assume it's online format that prevents you from taking the floor, but I'm relying on colleagues from Ukraine to take the floors. We had 2 active groups of working. Колеги, звертаюся зараз до колег з України, колеги з Держпраці. Можливо, зважаючи на те, що наші англомовні колеги поки що бояться взяти слово, я сподіваюся на вашу активну участь. Можливо, ви поділитеся результатами вашої дискусії.
Доброго дня, давайте я
Доброго дня. Пане Вадиме, доброго дня. Рад вас бачити.
Олена, дуже радий вас знов бачити. Надіємося.
I'm happy to see you once again. Hopefully, starting Monday, we're going to be able to see each other offline. I don't know if you have been missing us. We have been missing you. Definitely so. You're always welcome. So, speaking of digitalization, things are not looking up in the country right now, but whether you like it or not, the digitalization is there. It's evolving rapidly.
Є проблеми в нас, напевно, найбільші. Це, і ми постійно наголошуємо, це така досить
There has been an ongoing problem that we all have been able to see. So,
як максимальне
we need to use more registers. So we gotta pull some data from particular registers. You spoke of real-time data updates and the ability to have access to those. kinds of databases, but there are issues with us in this regard. We've got one register that we can look into in the real-time mode. It is the register of insured individuals. And that's the one that is the main register for us that allows us to check on formal employment. We can see if the employment size matches the size we have actually discovered throughout the inspection.
Наприклад, перевізники, якісь ліцензії, якісь
Sometimes you need to find out more about some conveyors or licenses or some kind of equipment, vehicles.
Яка база у суб'єкта, да,
just to see what facilities the company has got, how many vehicles they have got in their car fleet. That's going to give you an idea of the personnel they should have on the spot. But there are issues with those kinds of data, so you have to file in extra requests, you have to reach out to somebody else and try and collaborate with them. So ideally, we would like to avoid all of that hassle, and as a government agency, we should have access to any registers in the real-time mode in order to retrieve valuable data from there. But that's the ideal way. So on the job, you need to corroborate a fact, and for that you have to have access to any information, any intel, but that's not like that right now, and that's the problem. The register I have mentioned is the only one we can actually use, the register of insured individuals. Speaking of the list of inspections, there is a program which keeps record of all of those inspections, past inspections. It's a pan-Ukrainian database where all inspections report their inspection visits, like State Labor Service and other services. They all report their data into that system, into that database. It's far from being perfect, and it's in need of improvement. We keep in touch with the ministry and the owners of the program, maybe the software, because the way it is right now, it does not allow us to do any analysis. It is just a set of data reflecting the inspections that have been carried out and some of the results. That's all what you get there. But the data set does not allow us to break it all down by types of violations or infringements. So there is just a pile of records in there, but there is no way for us to analyze that. I think we are at the entry level right now. So we use the Excel spreadsheets in order to try and collect some data and make sense out of that and move on. Last year, because of the martial law,
Держстат України, який от займається саме статистикою. Вони не збирають інформацію по неоформленим відносинам.
We contacted the state statistical office, and they have some data on undeclared work. And for the first time, my organization has been able to assess the status of undeclared work in the country. But that was just a ballpark estimate. We had an idea of putting together some algorithms involving AI in order to do a deeper analysis, possibly. So we kind of try and keep in touch and in line with the modern technologies, but it's something that we do internally most of the time. Maybe the colleagues could add something. Maybe they will do so in Torino next week.
Насправді, якщо можна, я використаю ваші слова, тому що дуже цікаво, що ви сказали на самому початку. Цифровізація біжить за нами. Це, по
You
суті,
spoke of digitalization
причина, з якої ми створили цей
that
курс.
is coming
Тому що
after
ми
us. It's
відчуваємо,
evolving
що
rapidly,
дуже
and that's the reason
багато
we have organized this course.
інновацій навколо
We can
нас, дуже
see that
багато
there are lots
джерел
of innovations
інформації,
around
які
us.
будуються
There are
з
various sources of
цифрової
information.
інфраструктури.
New
Щось
digital
є,
infrastructures
чогось
are
немає.
getting built.
Десь
We
ще ми
don't
на
have
першій
access to all
полиці
of them.
знаходимось, десь
We
вже ми
might be at the entry level in some things.
такою аналітикою зі штучним інтелектом користуємося. Тобто,
We might think of
як
using
нам
AI for
поміняти
analytical
процеси,
purposes as well.
це ось таке основне питання. І
But we
як
gotta
нам
pull all of that together
вирішити це
somehow.
питання, повернуся до одного з перших слайдів, яке в нас було сьогодні в презентації. Питання скоріше в тому, як нам ці процеси
It's all about how
для того,
can we
щоб
use all of
бути
these
до
processes
цілі, які ставимо ми,
in order to
а не
reach our objectives.
а не створювати нові якісь структури, тому що
It's not about setting
цифровізація
up
за
new
нами
agencies or
гониться, тому що вона
institutions
за нами
because the
біжить, і ми
digitalization is coming.
наввипередки із інноваціями, і з новими
And we're
якимись
trying to
інструментами,
think
і
of
з
some
іншими
innovations in
інфраструктурами, які
advance,
створюються
trying to
цифровими
build some
машинами.
infrastructure, digital
Якщо дозволите, колеги, я
infrastructure in
перейду
the
на
country.
англійську мову, тому що бачу, що в нас ще є колеги,
Let me
можливо, які
switch back
хотіли
to
б
English, and I
додатися
think
до
there are
нашої
more colleagues
дискусії,
willing
до
to
нашої
add something
дискусії,
to
яка у нас
this
відбувається
first
онлайн.
discussion we're having
So
online.
switching back to English, just to make sure we're capturing all of the input and all of the first reflections, because I do realize that today we threw a lot of information at you. And one of the valuable and tangible results of these discussions, something that I was just highlighting in Ukrainian, is a reflection on how do we make sure that this pressure that is building up, pressure for us to innovate, pressure to use new tools, new innovations, be more productive, be more responsive. How do we make sure that this pressure translates into correct decisions that are linked to the purposes that we are putting to objective that we are putting in our digital transformation strategies? And the reason we wanted to have this reflection, which is quite heavy on different types of data, what is accessible to us, what are we producing, is so that we can move more smoothly into our discussions when we will be going into practical cases. Because you will see next week all of the different examples that we will be using or case studies, they are grounded in data. So even if there is a tool or experience you would like to replicate, you need to see if you are able to move to and use this experience from another country based on what is available to you. And this is the reason why we are inviting you all to come prepared, to tell us what bottlenecks you are experiencing, to tell us what data you have. I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview and anticipate our first discussions, because we will continue the discussion on data on day one. So on Monday, we will be talking about different types of indicators. We will talk about data mining, machine learning. We will also touch upon different tools, methodologies, AI technologies, and applications in OSH specifically. And we will continue with the perspective of the tools, methodologies, and strategies of the use of data on the second day. And there will be different experiences and country experiences that will be brought into picture. Specifically on day 2, we'll have experience of Spain, and we will have a discussion with the colleagues from Spanish Inspectorate on how to strategically use the data and to move from cleaning your data sets to predictive analytics using AI. And we're also integrating every day of the week an AI clinic, because we really want a discussion on the AI not to add this layer of complexity, but on the contrary, be something that could be responsive to our needs, responsive to opportunities that are opening up to us. So if you have a data, bring it with you. It doesn't have to be a sensitive data. As I said, you can use your list of current indicators or KPIs that you have internally in inspection if you want to work on performance. You can anonymize any kind of a data set, and we can continue working with it. What I want you also to grasp in your preparations for our residential week in Turin, that we will be we're going to be deep diving into AI applications. And keep in mind that there will be three perspectives. One, more of a global perspective that we took today of inspectorate level. So you will see examples of how AI is integrated into digital strategy of the institution of the inspectorate. There will be an individual level. Each and every one of you will have a possibility to see what are the different tools, decision-making processes, what are the consideration you as individual can make using AI. And then finally, the third perspective that we will integrate starting from the very first day is a perspective of not only us in the inspectorate using the AI, but also keeping in mind how artificial intelligence is changing what we inspect, how AI is changing the workplaces. So we will be also looking into those technologies, AI-powered technologies that are being used right now at the workplace that can impact our decision making and the way how we are traditionally conducting our inspection visits on site. So a little bit of preparing the visit from the perspective of targeting that we did today, but also keeping in mind what we'll be doing in turn. I know that we exceeded already time, and this is to say that we really want to continue this discussion. We wanted to anticipate so much before you come to Turin, and we are waiting to see you and many of you to see again. It's a great pleasure to see some of the well-familiar faces on the screen today. But we also wanted to make sure you're prepared not only from the perspective of all of this massive information and frameworks and methodologies that we're giving to you. So there is a lot for you to digest, but we also want to make sure that your preparation in terms of logistics is going smoothly. Perhaps I'll pass the floor to Ilaria. Ilaria, can you hear me? Probably not yet. But I wanted to anticipate and give you a bit of orientation. So the preparations while you're packing your suitcases and you anticipated what's going to wait for you in Turin. You have a trip ahead of you. For some of you, it's going to be a several days trip. So we wanted to make sure that you have everything, mini checklist that we prepared for you. First of all, bring your laptop. We already said if you have data you would like to work with, because every single one of you will engage in individual project within this the context of this workshop. So bring your laptop. You will have a possibility to work on different activities that have individual nature. Your reflections, including AI Clinic, you will get a possibility to present some of your ideas. Every single one of you will get a possibility to present during the next week. So bring your laptop, charger, and adapter. I see that Ilaria is back with us. I don't know, we'd like to take it from here. We're just giving a sense of orientation, making sure that preparations are going smoothly and travel is going smoothly. So I was on the first point, emphasizing the importance of chargers and adapters, because in Italy you have very different electrical sockets. So make sure you have your adapters with you. So Ila, can I pass you the floor here? Because I know that you have been working quite a lot to make sure that that all of the logistical arrangements are in place and everything goes smoothly in terms of organization and preparation.
Yes. Thank you very much. Let me just very quickly switch here. Perfect. Can you hear me correctly?
Perfect.
Perfect. So thank you, everyone. First of all, it's a pleasure to get to see you, even if just online, but we know we're going to have the chance to get to know each other very soon, next week in Turin. As Olena was mentioning, it is very important for us that the travel arrangements are very clear to you, that everything is set, which means not only your air ticket to reach either to Milan or to Turin, but that you know exactly how to reach from the airport to the ITC ILO campus, because some of you already had arrangements with their institutions, or maybe they already got in contact with the ITC ILO transfer service. because if you did not have a chance to get this information already, let me please reiterate this, which this is very important. The ITC ILO campus provides, for those who would like to reserve one, a transfer service, both from Turin Caselle Airport and from Malpensa Airport. Of course, if you would like to get in contact with our service, we can share the email, and you get in contact with them. If you would like to have more specific information regarding prices, regarding anything that has to do with logistics, please do not hesitate to reach out to us either by email or by phone. We are fully available. Just make sure that if you want to arrange your airport transfer, check the last email that you have received from our colleagues from ITC ILO, and there you can find all the information needed. So all the steps that you need to take in order to make sure that you can book a transfer and have a smooth trip, let's say, to ITC ILO, even because we know that the trips might be quite long. So this is very important for us that you know how to reach the ITC ILO campus smoothly. And then something that maybe I would like to mention is that currently in Turin, the weather it's quite hot and humid. So we know that you're coming from very different and diverse countries and weather forecasts also. So please make sure that it can be quite hot and challenging. So be ready to have clothes that are appropriate to this weather. And we might also have mosquitoes in Torino. So if you're not used to it, make sure that you bring some mosquito repellent, because this might be also a bit challenging. But besides that, we know we're going to have nice weather in Torino. This is going to be a nice time to get to know each other and spend together this week on campus. So we are very eager to get to know you. And again, do not hesitate to reach out to us should you have any specific requirement, or you would like to have simply more guidance on specific topics. So I will just share in the chat again my email and the email of my colleagues in case you would like to get in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ilaria. Indeed, we have been already in contact with some of your institutions. So we, if I'm not mistaken, for all of the colleagues from Ukraine and Turkey, we already had specific arrangements that for transfers between the airport and campus. If you have any requirements, or if you have questions, or if they're already, probably most likely you are already in touch and they were pending exchanges regarding transfers, just make sure you have that before you come to Turin. And then indeed, it's getting really, really hot. Just 1 week ago, it was hot, but there was still a little bit of nice and cool air coming from the mountains. Next week is going to be particularly hot. It's the temperature will get up to 37 degrees, and it is humid, so it feels really when it gets to 37 degrees. Now, we will be inside most of the time. We will be under air conditioning. So as you can see, today is also pretty hot, but I'm wearing a jacket. So it's all of the premises of ITC ILO are air conditioned. You might want to have layers. While you're packing your suitcase, something else I'm anticipating a little bit to what we have in the program. On Tuesday, we will be outside the campus after the course. So, meaning in the evening, we will be going for a dinner, and the dinner will be outside Turin on the hills. We have prepared a special night for you with all of the courses of the Digital Governance Initiative. You would like to wear something more elegant or perhaps traditional clothes, this could be a good moment. Also, on Wednesday, we will have a moment when we all take a group picture. Depending on the cohort, we had with different in different groups, we have different arrangements, but sometimes if all the cohort of the course decides to wear traditional clothes, it could be a moment for all of us to capture this as a memory on the group picture. We once had no, actually we had twice editions, and I think recently was a third edition of different courses where with colleagues from Ukraine, we were deciding to wear vyshyvanki, which is a traditional shirts on the day when we take a picture. So again, colleagues, this is for you to decide what you would like to bring. If you would like to bring some traditional clothes, if you would like to make it part of the group picture, or if you would like to make it an outfit for our kind of a gala dinner that we will have on Tuesday, up to you. Also take something comfy. We would like to show you the city. On Thursday, we will have a tour, a city tour. It will be by bus, but there will be also a walking part. But also, if you want to explore the city on your own, you might want to have something comfortable to walk around the city. These are the tips that we wanted to give you, as we know that you're most likely packing right now, reading hopefully all of the resources on the campus, because now the time has come for you to complete all of the different activities that you have in terms of pre-course modules, but also activities on the campus that give you credit towards your certification. And I think this would be all from us today. We apologize that we exceeded a bit of time that was allocated for this session, but we felt that it was important for us to go through the building blocks, preparing you for the content next week, but also going through some of the logistics and giving you some tips, orienting you on what is waiting for you on campus next week. So colleagues, unless there are any questions, I think it would be the moment for us to close the session, but let me just double check and make sure we do not have any urgent or pending questions in the room. I'm checking the chat box. We don't have anything urgent for now. I see Laria shared her email. This is great. Do not hesitate to reach out to all of us. You have contacts also on the eCampus platform. So I don't see any burning questions, any hands in the air. Then it gives me an opportunity to close this session. Wish you safe travels, and we are looking forward to seeing you very soon on campus in Turin. Колеги, бажаємо вам гарної дороги. Ми вас чекаємо в Турині, особливо чекаємо колег, хто вже був, хто може зорієнтувати інших колег, як у нас проходять навчання на кампусі. Ми для вас декілька цікавинок приготували на цей курс, тому якщо у вас є якісь запитання, не вагайтесь, ми працюємо для вас, тому завжди на зв'язку. І гарної дороги, побачимося в понеділок. На зв'язку залишаємось. Бажаємо гарного дня. Colleagues, thank you very much for your attention today. Wish you safe travels. We'll see you on Monday. In the meantime, we stay available for you if you have any questions. Have a great day, and we stay in touch.
До
Thank you.
побачення.
До побачення, до зустрічі.
До зустрічі.